for a driving incident. So what happened there was that you entered into a contract with the state when you chose to go and get a driver's license. Now, whether or not you understood that you didn't have to have a driver's license because government cannot interfere with your use of your private property. Your vehicle is your property. That's your private property. It's yours, right? And because it's yours, government cannot interfere with your use of that private property unless you enter into a contract changing your legal relationship with the state, permitting yourself to be subject to it. And that's what they claim. They claim that you willfully entered into a contract to obey the state driving laws. But government cannot interfere with your use of private property. So that vehicle is yours. You can do with it what you want as long as you're not harming someone else, right? And so, but when you enter into a contract with the state to get a driver's license, now, you know, the terms are important because now you're not traveling, now you're driving. Now you've entered into a contract that agrees to obey the driving laws, right? And as a result, now you are subject to criminal or civil sanctions should you breach the contract terms that are in place. So, you know, if the contract says I will obey the driving laws and the driving laws say you have to drive 60 miles an hour and you're out driving 75 miles an hour, then they could pull you over because that's a breach of contract. And as a result of the breach of contract, now you need to come into a courtroom to negotiate the terms of the breach, right? But where they get you on the second one is your vehicle, your private property. When you take your private property and you register it with the corporation, guess what? Now you're driving for commercial purposes because now that vehicle is a commercial operating vehicle, right? So when the Supreme Court comes out and says that you can travel for non-commercial purposes freely without a license, when they say that, well, what they're saying is that you willfully entered into a contract to subject yourself to the driving laws, and then you've taken your vehicle and you've registered it with the corporation, and now as a result of registering it with the corporation, now you are operating for commercial purposes, and now that's not your property, it's registered with the corporation. That's where they get you. Now, the other way that they get you is if you purchase a vehicle, right, and that vehicle is financed, well, you enter into a contract with that finance corporation, and in that contract it says, I'll have a driver's license, I'll have insurance, I will register my vehicle, and now you are bound to certain obligations because of that particular contract. If you want to avoid the contract, you cannot enter into a contract with a finance company because obviously the finance company wants to proliferate this whole concept, because this is all about the banking institution. So when you agree to finance a vehicle because you don't have the money to be able to pay for it, and you agree that you're going to go to this bank and ask this bank to go to your SESQV and pull from your QSIP from your own account, and then they give you the money so that you will sign an agreement to get a driver's license, get your registration, you carry insurance, those things you don't have to have unless you're in a contract with them agreeing to do it. So this whole system has been set up to confuse you into not realizing that vehicle is your property. You paid for it with your money out of your account, and you went to someone else and agreed to certain terms that you're now bound to follow as a result of nothing more than them wanting to proliferate this ignorance that exists. So what happens then is that in order to not be subject to those particular laws, two things has to happen. First off, you have to remove the contracts, which means that vehicle can't be registered. You remove it from the corporation. That's my vehicle. I own it. You, corporation, have nothing to do with this. Now it's my personal property. I can do what I want with my personal property. Government can't interfere with my use of it. And then you must remove your driving status, right? I'm not a driver. I don't have to have a license. I'm not going to have an agreement with you, state, because I have the freedom to be able to operate this private property in whatever way I see fit. I will choose to be obedient to your laws out of love, faith, and obedience to my fellow man, meaning that I'm not going to drive in a reckless manner. I'm going to drive consistent with your laws because that's what my fellow man has said that he would like to do, and I'm going to willfully subject myself to it, but I'm not going to be subjected to it under contract. And that's a very, very important point. Now, the second thing is that in order for this to work, right, we need those that are in a position of authority to understand that they're exceeding their authority when they breach the obligation. They believe that they can do these things because that's how it's been done for 100 years. And it doesn't matter how long it's been done or how many times it's been done, wrong is always wrong. And if you're doing things wrong, prosecutor, you're doing things wrong, judge, then it's still wrong and it can never become right. So we need something that's going to wake them up to a massive scale, but you guys got to get out of your contracts, and that's what I'm trying to do here is we can void these contracts, by voiding the state laws, and that's what I'm doing here at the Supreme Court. We're extremely close to it. You know, I'm using one specific mechanism, the indictment by the grand jury, and the breach of obligation as a result of the failure to use the indictment by a grand jury by these 32 states. But that simply is the bigger introduction to show that these states and statutes, they have no authority, because just as Justice Gorsuch says, they're based upon administrative law, not common law. They have no validity whatsoever. Courts can't rely upon something that is not common law. They can't become willful accomplices in the breach of the very laws that they were instituted to be able to protect and defend.
The next question.
Well, there's one thing I want to add to that, if I could. So the Supreme Court's theory behind the Thompson versus Smith ruling, where they said that you don't have to have that you can travel for non-commercial purposes. This is the rationale behind it. Okay, so if each state has their own independent driving laws, right, and driving statutes, right, and you go and you apply to the corporation for a driver's license in the state of say Montana, right, now you're subject to Montana state driving laws, but that means that you can travel through the state of Pennsylvania, not obeying the Pennsylvania state driving laws, and guess what? They can't enforce the state of Pennsylvania. So if your driver's license is suspended, for instance, out of Montana, and you're driving through Pennsylvania can't do anything about it. You can travel through the state of Pennsylvania because you're not subject to Pennsylvania laws, and the state of Pennsylvania cannot enforce the laws of Montana, right? So you have the authority to be able to travel for non-commercial purposes. Now, the non-commercial element is that when you have a CDL, the CDL is enforceable across jurisdictional lines. So if you have a CDL, then that would be subject to enforceability within each one of the independent 50 regional governments. But if you have a independent driver's license that's suspended, or a registration suspended, or even if you don't have your vehicle registered and there's no tags on it, you can drive through a state, because I don't have to go and get a driver's license in the state of Pennsylvania simply to drive through it, right? And if I'm not there for an extended period of time, more than 60 days, I don't have to have a driver's license. Therefore, I can travel through the state of Pennsylvania without a license, with a license, with it suspended, with or without tags. It doesn't matter, because the state of Pennsylvania cannot enforce the different states' laws. So that's the rationale behind the ruling from the Supreme Court. That's one of the reasons why I don't spend more than 30 days in any particular area. I'm constantly on the move because I have to maintain my particular status. I don't have an ID. I won't get an ID. I will not accept a state ID. The only ID I carry is my veteran's ID, which is a federally issued ID, and it's good for travel. And so as a result, I can travel through the states, and the states have no authority to be able to enforce another state's laws. We know that. Jurisdictionally, the state of Pennsylvania cannot enforce the state of Montana's laws. So if the state of Montana says that I don't have a driver's license, state of Pennsylvania, you can't do a goddamn thing about that. Period. Okay?
That's powerful.